I don't know, shocker. We have had public hearings, I think, for the last few meetings in a row. Anyways, let's get right to it. Adoption of the agenda. Start with you, Councillor Nagel. I got your name down now.
Sure. I so move the agenda.
Nothing to change? No?
No.
All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Minutes of our previous meeting. Councillor Flowers, you want to do that? All those in favor? Carried. No delegations. Moving into bylaws. Councillor Reid is away on holidays. Councillor McFadden, it's always one of them, is away tonight as well.
All
Good
right.
evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. This presentation is for the proposed amendments to the Heartland Stage 2 Area Structure Plan and Council's consideration of second and third reading of Bylaw 07-2019. So the Heartland community does currently have 2 approved area structure plans. Stage 1 does cover the southern portion and Stage 2 covers the northern portion. Both of the current area structure plans were adopted in 2015. And the proposed ASP amendments being discussed tonight are affecting just the Stage 2 area structure plan lands only. So the proposed area structure plan amendments are in relation to the parcels within the black boxes on the screen and are the result of some recent changes in the community. So the first change is in relation to the red parcel. It was originally planned as an 8-acre commercial site. It was planned at this size with the intent of attracting a grocery store to open in that location. However, once discussions with grocers occurred, it was determined that there were not enough homes in the area for a grocer to consider building there. It was also determined that this was too large for a local commercial site, and the developer did have challenges marketing a local commercial site that large. In addition, that area cannot actually be developed until the eastern storm pond is constructed, meaning that it would be some time before any commercial amenities would be constructed in Heartland. In response, the developer applied to change the local commercial site to this 2.6 acre site instead. This was approved by Town Council in May of 2018. Therefore, this portion of the amendment is simply bringing the area structure plan into compliance with an already approved decision. The second change to the area was in relation to the purple parcel. This was originally intended for the new RCMP station. However, during the more detailed design stage for the site, it was determined by the RCMP and the town that the 2-acre site was too small. The town then approached the developer about purchasing an approximately 4.7 acre site in the northwest corner of the plan area. The new site would replace that brown medium-high density parcel in the northwest corner, as well as the block of low-density residential directly to the east of the brown parcel. So with the new RCMP site proposed in the northwest corner and the commercial site now moved to the west side of Heartland Boulevard, that left the former RCMP site shown in the purple and the former commercial site shown in the red, needing to be changed to something else. Given the density targets required by the town's municipal development plan, it made the most sense to change these parcels into multifamily to make up for the loss of the other 2 proposed sites. This slide is showing the proposed land use concept amendments to the Stage 2 area structure plan. So as you can see on the slide, the RCMP site has been moved to the northwest corner, the commercial site has been updated to its current location, and the remaining parcels have been shown as the medium-high density sites that were replaced. In addition to the mapping changes that were shown on the previous slides, there are some content and textual changes also being proposed. Policy 7.2.2L speaks to commercial uses adjacent to public service lots, and that's proposed to be removed as the commercial site would no longer be adjacent to the public service lot or the RCMP station. Policy 8.1.2 speaks about public service development, again being the RCMP site, being physically compatible with adjacent residential and commercial areas. This is proposed to be amended to remove the commercial portion, as the RCMP site will no longer be adjacent to the commercial lands. The final change being proposed in relation to the ASP is the change to the medium high density zoning. So the new location is slightly larger than the previously planned parcels, meaning the amount of multifamily has gone up from approximately 6.37 acres to 9.19 acres. Also, the low density was reduced from 51.25 acres to 50.58 with removal of that R2 strip for the RCMP site. This means that the proposed density for the Stage 2 lands goes from 8.16 units per acre to approximately 8.6 with these amendments. The public hearing for Bylaw 07-2019 was held on April 8th. 2 Heartland residents did speak at the public hearing. One had concerns with potential traffic and parking issues that may arise should the former RCMP lands be changed to residential. And the second resident asked for clarification regarding the small R2 portion, just in this area here, and we'll talk about it in the land use application next. So in order to ensure that traffic and parking are managed, traffic impact assessments can be requested at either subdivision or development stages. When a development permit would come in on the former RCMP lands for residential development, it would be ensured that appropriate visitor and resident parking would be supplied as per the parking regulations in the land use bylaw. So with that, administration is recommending that council does give both second reading and third reading to Bylaw 07-2019.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Council, any questions? Councillor Wilson?
Sure. Thank you. I missed, did we have the Cochrane Planning Commission's comments embedded in there in the presentation? Did I miss those?
Sorry, through the chair, I presented all of the comments from the circulation and the Cochrane Planning Commission at the public hearing and in that report.
Okay, thank you. I'll chime back in just a second here then.
Okay. Councillor Nagel?
I really like the area zoned for commercial use, but I understand that there are some extra considerations given that we've moved the planned RCMP station. What would be the consequences of us voting against this bylaw this evening?
So through the chair, currently, I guess that's kind of a twofold question. So there is a land use amendment also on the table in the next presentation, but to not approve this bylaw would mean that the area structure plan would not be in compliance with where the town's proposing to build the RCMP station, nor in compliance with where that commercial site has been moved to.
So basically, if we defeat this, then the plans for the RCMP station get frozen?
Well, through the chair, not necessarily. It would depend, I would say, more how you voted at the land use stage, because the land use, the next application is actually proposing to change that land use to the public service. This is changing the higher level document to support that change. So that's kind of a roundabout way of saying it. If you want to be moving the RCMP station, it would be in council's best interest to likely amend this plan as the higher level document supporting that kind of change. If there is a concern about the residential portion, I guess we could discuss that further or revisit that. But this is kind of the guiding document that's going to lead into your land use amendment that comes next, and then into the development permit for the RCMP station.
Okay. I don't feel incredibly strongly one way or the other about this one, but I'm always interested in pushing for more commercial. I'd be interested to hear everybody else's thoughts on trying to keep some of the commercial from being rezoned into medium high density.
Councillor Padeco?
I would like to move option 1. CPC did look at this in great deal, and we see kind of some of the other things that are coming in that commercial area. So I would like to suggest that Council give second and third reading to Bylaw 07-2019. The only thing that I would like to suggest is once we get to that subdivision stage, that I know that there was concerns about parking, and I realize that we're not quite there yet, but whether or not we can do a parking study within that area to make sure that the residents in that area are satisfied with how things are handled around there.
Okay, so just to be clear, second reading only is on the floor. Councillor Nagel asked for a bit of comment from the rest of us. For me, I was really listening to, and I had the same concerns about reducing commercial, because as you have stated, I would like to see as much commercial in our community as possible. I am hearing, though, in this application that that's not working in this area with the amount of residential that's there. So for me, I think this is kind of a meet in the middle. We're not getting rid of all the commercial, we're just downsizing it a little bit. So for me, I think I could be in favor of this. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. I side with some of what Councillor Nagel had to say there. Most of what Councillor Nagel had to say, where my concerns are, we're only slightly increasing the UPA. So the number of residents in Heartland from the original proposal to this new one. And I believe, if you could help me out, Candace, is it just Heartland Stage 2 that we're counting for to go from 8.6 to 8.60?
Yes, through the chair, that was only the northern half.
So for me, I would be leaning towards a solution that slightly dials that back to its original levels, and I thought some of the things brought up both by the Cochrane Planning Commission in regards to increased traffic, to parking concerns, and also to some of the residents that neighbor those properties having concerns about higher density residential going in there are concerns that I share. And so I would be leaning towards a more middle of the road solution, possibly, where we dial back that medium density residential and try to include more commercial in that space. Would be my appetite.
Okay, so just to be clear, we're talking about area structure plan. Ms. Bannock, so we would get into land use at the very next item on the agenda.
Well, through the chair, this would be the higher level document that should be guiding your land use decisions.
So densities and that
The
should be
the densities
addressed at this level?
are in this document
Yeah.
specifically,
Okay.
and this land use concept is part of the area structure plan as well. So if there were to be changes, I would suggest that they do happen at this stage to change, if this is the concern, to address it at this stage so that it would guide your land use decisions.
Okay. And to be clear, you're moving from 8.16 to 8.6?
Yes, through the chair.
So 0.5 units per acre difference in that one section?
Yeah, so that's the graph specifically from the stage 2 area structure plan, which is the area shown in the color on the screen.
And help me with the math. At 2.6 people per unit times 0.5. So how many people what's the increase in population that we'd be dealing with? It's not even it's 0.46 or something difference, right? I just want to get
Through the
order of
chair,
magnitude of people.
we did have this question back at, I can't remember if it was first reading or public hearing. Actually, maybe it was even Cochrane Planning Commission. I honestly can't remember. It was an increase of about 100 people in the area. So.
Okay. Do you have any other questions or comments at this time, Councillor Wilson?
Only to add to what I just said, that I think it's only fair that when the original residents that have bought into Heartland, were expecting a certain amount of commercial and a certain density per acre around them, and when you're buying in for one vision and it ends up getting changed to another one, I have concerns with that as well. So even though we're only talking about 100 people, it's a meaningful 100 people to me. So if there's a way to trim that down to somewhere closer to its original density target, it would make me more comfortable, especially if that was commercial space that we're keeping.
Okay. And I wasn't going around 100 people saying it was not a big number. Councillor Flowers?
I would support the changes. I think it would be nice to have more commercial, but if there's no need or call for it, I can see why they want to make the changes. And I would support it going forward.
Okay. Councillor Nagel?
I think it sounds like there might be support for getting some changes to the area structure plan. Procedurally, how would you guys like council to proceed? Would administration be interested in going back to talk to the applicant to see if there's more flexibility on introducing more commercial, or should we just vote against it at this point if we're looking for changes?
So
Mr. Devanna?
I just wanted to talk, I'll answer that question, but I wanted to talk about the commercial. So we know that there has been difficulty at filling the commercial on Horse Creek and the highway up just north of the new police station. And we've already previously approved the commercial in its current location there in the pink color. And so I am concerned that we would, at this point, try to introduce more commercial into this particular development. And then what I'm hearing is that there's some concern about the medium, high-density residential housing. If there is an appetite to reduce some of that orange piece, and it wouldn't be anything on the highway. Nobody wants to be on the highway in a single-family home. So it would be south, in that kind of in the L-shaped part at the bottom. If you're looking at lower density residential, then you should give us some guidance here. I'm not wanting to kill this application. That's going to set us back 3 to 6 months, possibly, just to go. We're going to have to even now, if you decide you want to change something, that we're going to go back. We'll talk, and I'm hoping it's only on the medium, low, high density stuff, that we're just going to try and reduce some of the density and put a bit more yellow in. In that map there. And then we would have to have another public hearing, the way I understand the way the rules work. So we would, because we got to tell the public that you've made this fairly substantive change to the ASP. And then we would then come back and have second and third reading again. But you really got to narrow down what you want to do here as far as, so I would work, we're very, staff, we're trying to get a police station constructed, and this is going to set that back, possibly going to set it back a year, because we're not going to build or construct or plan unless we know we have the site. And so if you're, and then on the commercial, I think you have too much already in this area based on demand. And so then it just comes down to this orange area. Do you want to reduce it? And if so, where would that reduction happen? That would work from a planning perspective. But I don't want you to defeat the bylaw if you're, substantially, agreeing with it. You're just having a few little problems.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we like where the RCMP station is. We like that there's commercial. It's the amount of density in the orange. And potentially more commercial if could be, but I'm hearing from administration, they're not in support of that. So, Councillor.
Yeah, do I need a motion to defer at this point then? Is that something I should be doing? Defer with
Or
the...
amend. Sorry.
Respectfully, there's a current motion on the floor, so Councillor Fedeko would need to make a decision to accept a friendly amendment or rescind her motion that is currently pending in front of council.
Is that cleared up for you?
Sure, but I would just like to quickly comment though about the commercial. I totally recognize their challenges. Like I drove over there and looked the other day, and like I can see they're having a hard time filling up commercial across the street. But my thinking is just that like we have development approved for at full build out like close to 60,000 people, and I just feel that if we can ask developers to be a little patient with their commercial as our town's population increases, I think there's going to be an increased demand for commercial. So for me, pushing for more commercial, I just think it's a bit more of a long-term decision. But yes, Councillor Fedeko, if you would be interested, I would like to move that we defer this or amend on this.
I make an amendment or defeat second reading, but Councillor Flowers and Fedeko both spoken in favor of it at this point. Councillor Wilson?
I was just going to address Mr. Devanna's comments there, and that's simply that I have no interest in delaying this. That's not my intent. It was simply the UPA that was giving me concerns, so any tweaks we could make to get that down closer to its original level would satisfy me, even if that wasn't commercial. So I believe I'm looking for an amendment, which we'd have to go to voting here to decide, but that's my intent.
Okay, so now Ms. Bannock, we're close to what you're talking about. Can we deal with the units per acre and the land use in the land use, which is second on the agenda here? Mr. Devanna, if you will help us out.
You know, the area structure plan sits over top
Yeah.
of the land use plan. You know, so I have concerns if you have to decide where this other lower density is going to happen, like within the orange, where's the yellow going to go? My concern is that we haven't consulted with staff, and we don't know where staff would recommend putting the yellow. And so, to me, it makes sense to at least defer this until the next council meeting, and to allow us to consult with the developer and the planning department to determine whether they support, and then we can support where the yellow goes. Rather than you guys trying on the fly to say, well, I think
Yeah.
we'll put the yellow, you know, here.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's gonna be a constructive process, because we gotta figure out where the roads are gonna be, how the sewer's running, you know, just there's a few other complications. So I think if there aren't three of you that support the current application, which is the motion on the floor, then my preference would be that it gets deferred to the next meeting. And
Okay, that's kind of where I'm leaning to. I think we should defer it for now. We've got two councillors missing. If it could be a 3-2 or a 3-2 the other way. I think instead of risking and arbitrarily adding a yellow or an orange or a pink, yeah, I agree with Mr. Devanna. Councillor Federico.
Wouldn't the point being, and maybe Mr. Weldon or Mr. Devanna, you can answer this, like, it's still driven by market demand, is that correct? Like, even if it becomes medium density, like, it's still driven by market demand, right?
well, yeah, the issue here is that I'm sure there'll be more there's going to be market demand for low-density residential, like, but if it shows medium-high density, then us staff are going to only support that color, that type of density related to the zoning. So, you know, my concern is, you know, we can't piecemeal it out and, like, I would love if we could, but I don't think we can. You know, approve the public facility, the purple, and the pink's already approved, but the medium-high density is not consistent in the current ASP with what we were going to be doing. So even if the market demand's there, they wouldn't be able to build it if they don't have the proper zoning and the proper ASP in place. So I think, you know, it's unfortunate we don't have a full group here, because maybe we'd have a different conclusion here, but I really don't want to set this thing back on a minor change in the density, and I think it's just prudent to wait.
Is 3 weeks to a next council meeting going to be a big wait?
Not from the RCMP's
Yeah.
point of view, but a delay of 3 to 6 months is really
Yeah.
going to put a lot of uncertainty in everything, and that's why I don't want you just to defeat.
Yeah, I'm not hearing that from anybody. Yeah. So to get a motion to defer, we have to deal with the second reading first. So it's not defeat?
Current motion on the floor is to bring second reading for bylaw 7.
07, yeah.
Should Councillor Federico want to withdraw that motion would be withdrawn and allow a new motion to be put forward.
Okay. There you go.
I can withdraw the motion for option 1, and allow somebody to make a new motion for that one.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Federico. Councillor Wilson?
I'm happy to make the new motion then for Bylaw 07, 2019 to defer until our next council meeting.
Okay, that's procedurally correct? Yeah. All those in favor of that motion? Carried. Thank you. So that kind of,
Next one will get deferred.
yeah, automatically. Yeah,
You have to put a motion on the floor.
okay. For the land use. I thought this was going to be a fairly easy council meeting.
So, yeah, through the chair, I won't do the presentation, but it is for Bylaw 08-2019, so
Okay.
just so you know.
Councillor Wilson, do you want to carry on with your deferrals?
Sure, I'll carry on with Bylaw 07, 2019. Now we're on land use, and I would like to delay that until our next council meeting.
It's 08.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
sorry. Pardon me, Bylaw 08,
Yeah, okay.
land use.
All those in favor of deferring to the next council meeting? It's carried. Thank you. One more small bylaw. Backlit signs.
Good evening, Mayor Janung and members of council. I'm here tonight. Ms. Tomes is not available, so I'm here to present Bylaw 16-2019 for your consideration for second reading and third reading. So just again, a bit of the background. This is a proposed amendment to the land use bylaw for backlit signs. They are currently prohibited, and the bylaw would allow for the consideration of backlit signs as a discretionary use in 5 districts within our land use bylaw. It would also establish the approving authority to be the Cochrane Planning Commission, and it also proposes regulations to guide the decisions as well as the limits on the backlit signs in terms of light and intensity and other factors. The definition of backlit sign means any sign type that is illuminated from the rear of the sign face itself. As I mentioned, it is currently prohibited, and it is not a permitted or a discretionary use in any district currently within the town of Cochrane land use bylaw. So why? Why are we coming back, or not really coming back, but why are we proposing to allow for the consideration of backlit signs within the community? And it's simply, administration has really received a lot of inquiries and a lot of demand over the last few years for backlit signs. I can say personally with the files that I have handled that almost every file, commercial that is, or industrial, has asked for a backlit sign, but they are currently prohibited within the land use bylaw. So which districts are we considering to allow, as a discretionary use, backlit signs? The CSC, or the Commercial Shopping Center District, the Commercial Highway District, or the Highway Commercial District, the Service Commercial District, the Business Park Industrial District, and the General Industrial District. These, I'll just show you where they are located, and I have to refer to my notes because I'm a bit colorblind, so just please bear with me. So the Highway Commercial District is the red with the polka dots. This is the shopping center in the deep or darker red. The Service Commercial is in raspberry red. The Industrial in light gray. And the Business Park in purple. If we go up to Sunset Ridge, it is currently the shopping center district, so it would be considered up there. As well as if we go to the south of the town in River Heights, we have a highway commercial district there. We have a service commercial shopping center, as well as our industrial district. Specifically, this will remove the prohibition of backlit signs from those districts. and list them as a discretionary use. As a discretionary use, the Cochrane Planning Commission would become the development authority or the approving authority for these development permit applications. The regulations listing backlit signs as I said, as a discretionary use, but it also proposes including the missing legend from table 36.3.1. So this legend appeared in an earlier version of the land use bylaw and should be returned. So that legend specifically is going to be included back into the land use bylaw. The specific regulations, and this is to address concerns about backlit signage raised in the past, limiting sign brightness, and that is measured in lumens. So limiting sign brightness to 6,000 lumens and requiring the sign to be dimmed by half the original intensity between the hours of 10 p.m. or 2200 and 0600 or 6 a.m. Providing the development authority with the discretion to reduce the brightness of the backlit sign regardless of whether it does meet the 6,000 lumens. And so that will be a contextual piece within for each application. It provides the development authority with the discretion to limit the number of backlit signs on a property. And it does provide dark sky friendly and sign lighting impact considerations at the time of development permit application. Now, for the planning evaluation. So we do a policy review specifically for our sustainability plan and our municipal development plan. And both of these support economic activity, which would include signage for businesses, and diversity, as well as promoting our Western heritage design guidelines and overall Western heritage aesthetic. So the land use bylaw, a little bit of the history, which was previously presented to you, but these signs were prohibited in 2015. And since then, they've been limited to having the front illuminated sign face, which is usually in the form of gooseneck lighting. Now, we are introducing the option for 5 of the 11 commercial and industrial districts to have these as a consideration, as previously mentioned. And since we are currently undertaking a land use bylaw review, which will be brought forward to council for their consideration early next year, that is another opportunity for council to relook at the backlit sign considerations in these districts, as well as overall for the community at that time, if council so wishes to proceed tonight. The Western Heritage Design Guidelines, there is widespread policy support, more specifically through our municipal development plan that supports Western Heritage design, and backlit signage is not encouraged within the Western Heritage Design Guidelines. Specifically within our historical downtown, no sign should be backlit. Our downtown expansion area, which would include the quarry, no sign should be backlit either. As you can see highlighted in yellow, there are consideration for the shopping center district as well as the service commercial district that is applied in this specific area. Signage should be front lit in the industrial district, which is the M1 and the business park. And for highway commercial, signage may be lit from the front as well. Now, follow-up research, specifically with the economic activity. Now, at the public hearing, there was some comments and commenters that had provided questions and comments, and council posed a question if there was research to support the use of backlit signage to generate business or economic activity. The Sign Research Foundation, which we looked into, is a nonprofit organization that is industry specific, that grants funding to academic researchers based in the United States. A qualitative survey was recently conducted which asked business owners to evaluate their perception of the value of illuminated signs. The main reasons that illuminated signs were valued included brand recognition. It reinforces their marketing strategy after dark. It enhances the store image and helps communicate business location. It was not clear from the study if this was specific to internally illuminated signage or just for illuminated signage in general. Cochrane does allow front-lit signs in all commercial and industrial districts as well as the institutional districts. The positive value of on-premise signage is demonstrated in statistical studies from 1997 as well as 2012 as having a positive economic impact. These studies were not specific enough to isolate the illumination type within the analysis, just the illumination itself. And there were several studies that dated years and years back up until 2014 that analyzed various brightness ordinances or regulations due to concerns about distracted driving and the legibility and factored in the ambient brightness of the surrounding area, daytime brightness, nighttime level of darkness, color illumination, the location, et cetera, et cetera. The range of optimal brightness ranged from 88 lumens for minimal legibility from 60 meters away to 440 lumens for a rural highway. But keeping in mind that this is in a context that does not have any other additional light in that area. Now, and up to 8,800 lumens for nighttime in brightness for distracting amounts of light, and this is in commercial areas that already have a lot of light or already have a lot of lit signage. Now, the level of brightness. Similarly, there was research on the level of brightness. And this, again, is based on the distance, the visibility, the legibility, as well as the age of the driver as they're driving in their car to notice these types of signs. And again, the range was very broad depending on the context of the amount of light and the amount of lit signage within each of the areas. And that ranges from 88 lumens to 8,800 lumens. We also looked into comparable municipalities. Now, it is common for municipalities to have design guidelines for various types of development or specific areas within a municipality. What seems to be unique is the prohibition of backlit signs or types of illumination for the signs in certain areas or districts of either commercial or industrial development. This type of signage is most commonly restricted in resort or tourist-focused towns, historic or conservation districts within specific areas of town, or sometimes for the entire municipalities that have strong architectural aesthetic and other cultural significance. Some of these municipalities include Banff, Bragg Creek, Canmore, ourselves, Fernie, Gibsons, the Secchelet district in BC, Invermere, Jasper, Kingston, Ontario, Radium, Smithers, Whitby, Manitoba, as well as Whistler, British Columbia. Now, within this list, each municipality takes a different approach, and the regulations for signs in the communities in BC are typically, they have separate bylaws for signage altogether, whereas in Alberta, for example, the signage is regulated through the land use bylaw itself. Now, while there are other communities beside Cochrane that have chosen to prohibit completely backlit signs, some places do allow certain types which are technology specific of backlit signs, such as halo lighting and lighting behind individual cut letters or behind fabric canopies and so on. These are generally kept dark except for the letters themselves. Some respond to different economic realities of the community and provide for certain types of businesses such as hotels and other accommodation. Kingston, Ontario restricts commercial backlit signs with a setback to residential zone properties specifically. And in some cases, backlit signs may be allowed using dark sky principles and encouraged where there is direct glare from a sign, they actually restrict those types of signs as well. So regardless of the method, there is typically a process to request a variance through a specific sign permit or a development permit. Cochrane's approach to either prohibit or to prohibit in a historical district, such as the downtown, which is in line with the amendment before you today, is in line with the approaches from the majority of the municipalities that we looked at. Now, specifically for the communication and the engagement, it was circulated to internal departments as well as external agencies, community associations, the Cochrane Planning Commission on March 20th, as well as the public hearing that took place on March 25th. There were, at the public hearing, there were 3 written submissions and 3 verbal submissions, and as well as representation from the Cochrane Planning Commission, which highlighted the option of deferral to the land use bylaw project to consider these changes to the bylaw. That concludes my presentation. Administration is recommending option 1 tonight to give second and third reading to Bylaw 16/2019. I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, thanks. Council, anyone? Councillor Wilson,
Yep, thank you.
CPC member?
That's right. I have a few questions if I could, Riley.
Sure.
A few of the statistics at least. How many backlit signs do we currently have, or at least how many has CPC approved since 2015? Do we know those numbers?
Yeah, I don't have the specific number. I know of at least 3 in particular, and that was most recently over the past year. Prior to that, I don't believe there was any that were approved.
Okay, and so if we were to defeat this proposed bylaw, the approved signs would still continue to go on as they already do? Okay. And I guess my question with, I did appreciate CPC's recommendation that this gets deferred and rolled in with our land use bylaw. I'm wondering if in that land use bylaw, are we going to be looking into light intensity from parking lot lights, street lights, front illuminated lights? Is that going to be part of that, or?
Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, yes, it certainly will. Right now, the recommendation within the bylaw is it gives a lot of discretion to consider these factors on a case-by-case basis or on an application-by-application basis. And things to consider is certainly the number of signs, the light that already exists within each of the parcels themselves to help determine if it's appropriate or what type of intensity of that sign is appropriate for each of the cases. But to answer your question, yes, during the land use bylaw review, that certainly will be a consideration when bringing forward the consideration of the backlit signs within each district, as well as the considerations for each lot specifically.
Okay, thank you. I'm sitting here fence sitting on this because I see the merits to both sides. I'm a fan of our dark sky policy. I like that we care about light pollution, that we want to be able to see dark skies from Cochrane and that we're not fully illuminated. And I also see, I'm very glad that during the public hearing we actually had a local businessman come and speak to why this is important, why this matters, why we're seeing these applications of CPC, that it's important to the business to have a backlit sign, particularly when you're a franchise moving into town, you're looking for recognition. And I sometimes question just how much backlit signs are actually going to add to light pollution. I feel like the bigger problems that we're facing are parking lot lights, street lights, intensity of front illuminated lights rather than these backlit signs. And for me, I'm interested to hear what the rest of council thinks about if this stopgap measure is something that we need to put through right now, or should we be deferring to our land use bylaw upcoming on all these things? So I'll leave it to see what others have to say, please.
Okay. Councillor Flowers?
Thank you. I really like the idea that they're cut in half during the night period. That makes a big difference. Every sign has to go through CPC?
Through the mayor, that is correct. Yeah, as a discretionary use, these Cochrane Planning Commission would be the approving authority, correct?
Seems like a great deal of work. Are they prepared to take that on? Is it reasonable?
I think that's what's happening now.
Is it?
Three somewhere, as I said.
Oh. Okay, but there'll be more if we pass it. There'll be lots more. Interesting. I'd like to hear what everyone else has to say.
Councillor Nagel?
First, on the topic of deferring to the land use bylaw, I personally think we should be making a decision this evening. I think we're getting into a bad habit of saying, oh, let's just deal with that in the land use bylaw review. And we're gonna end up with this like bylaw the size of the Canadian income tax code to review. It's gonna be impossible. So I think we just make the decision tonight, get some clarity in the community, and then if businesses wanna do their signs, they can get on with it or not if it gets defeated. I will be supporting it. I originally supported the move back in 2015, if my memory serves me correctly, just because I was kind of won over by the nice photos of what front lit signs can look like, and I really liked that way they looked. But as Councillor Wilson, I think, has pointed out a few times, what's happened is now that some companies that are deemed to be, bigger and more powerful just happen to get their hands on the front lit signs, and I think if some people are doing it, everybody should be able to do it. And the other thing is, if we want to be able to attract serious businesses to Cochrane, we need to allow businesses to act seriously, which means nice signs. So I have half a mind to say, let's just go all the way with permitted use. But this discretionary use gives CPC lots of tools to keep people under control, make sure it doesn't get too crazy, so it won't be like Times Square or Las Vegas and Cochrane. But I'll be supporting the motion. Wait, do we have a motion?
We don't.
I would like to move that we give second reading to bylaw 16.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nagel. Councillor Fideko?
I also support option 1, bylaw 16. I think that it always comes back to CPC, so at the end of the day, CPC members are able to look at that particular area, and I would guess that if it's an area in Sunset, if we're concerned about residential being impacted, that we can say, I'm sorry, you can't have a sign there. So from that end of things, I think that CPC's done a very good job at really looking at the details on a case-per-case scenario like we kind of have been, and it gives us some control to allow those businesses that I think where it works, and in other cases where it doesn't, it just doesn't. And so I don't want to see this deferred any longer. I think that what you've brought forward is good, and you've done lots of research on it, so I thank you for that.
Okay. To be honest, I was in favor of deferring this until I read the conditions in the 5 points that were in our package that Mr. Weldon put forward tonight. And why I like this is that CPC has the ability, well, I'll just read it. Limiting sign brightness to 6,000 lumens. I was wondering what 6,000 lumens meant. Now that we had the extra information, kind of have a bit more understanding of that. I like that the signs would have to be dimmed to half, which Councillor Flowers mentioned. I like that the Development Authority has the discretion to reduce the brightness even more if it's next to wherever. And I like also that the Development Authority, CPC, would have the discretion to limit the number of backlit signs on the property, because that was another concern of mine, that we'd have 100 of these on one thing, property, but CPC would be able to limit that. So, and also providing dark sky friendly impact consideration. So I'm in favor of moving forward tonight with those in mind, and I think CPC will have the discretion to limit them where we need them limited and allow them where we need them to be allowed, to provide business and flexibility in our land use bylaw. So that's my thoughts. Anybody else have anything to add? No? Call the question on second reading. All in favor? It's carried. Carry on a third reading. Councillor Nagel, do you want to put third reading?
I'll move third reading of bylaw 16.
All those in favor? That is carried also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to business. That felt like business. Those were bylaws. Council strategic priorities. Mr. Devanna.
I don't think there's a presentation. All right, thank you for having me. I'll keep it fairly short. Each year, in the first quarter, council sits down and they review their strategic priorities for the upcoming 3 years. Council did do this and updated their, so if you go to the next couple of pages. Yeah, there. So council updated their priorities in the 4 areas: community connectivity, community development and planning, community engagement, and community facilities and services, and made some changes. We took that out to the public, and the public gave us some feedback. The feedback was primarily that they would like to know where the connectivity is going to happen. And so what we've done is we've added, for the pathways, we already had talked about, all the steps in the local transit and the steps with the bridge. And so we've added what the trails are that how we're going to improve and advocate for local and regional pathway networks that connect all communities. And we've added complete design and construction of Horse Creek pedestrian crossing, complete design construction of Sunset Ridge pathway connection, and so on that list. And so we're here tonight to recommend that you approve the 2019 to 2022 Council Strategic Priorities as presented. That's it.
That was short.
I'm feeling for Marnie.
Councillor Fideko, do you want to put the motion on the floor?
I just have one quick question before I do. In the public consultation, was there anything flagged that maybe the public didn't necessarily agree with or come forward with to say that it wasn't necessarily a priority?
Yeah, sure. We asked the question on each one: community connectivity, community facilities, community engagement, and community development and planning, whether we're headed in the right direction. It was between 85 to 90% of people felt that we were heading in the right direction, that these were the right priorities. There were some interesting answers, though. We asked the question, are we building the community you want to live in? And the people were between 70 and 75%, so they agree with our priorities, but they were only 70 to 75% is the community they want to live in, which I found interesting, because they seem to think we're on the right track, but still 25 to 30% are a little bit concerned about something. But we didn't really hear much when we asked for additional concerns or people. One comment was that we should consider a pedestrian bridge over the west end at Bow Meadows, which is something long-term that we've talked about with council, but it's not in this 3-year window. They talked about off-leash dog parks, which we have actually approved a strategy and a policy on that. And they wanted more activities and services for groups in need, and they specifically noted seniors, youth, community groups, and veterans. And then finally, related to community development, they said that they had some concerns about the residential commercial growth in the community, which we would deal with through the land use bylaw. There was a comment that they would like to see a community theater at the Tri-Site, which is something already in the plan. And they would like to have a comprehensive tourism plan, which is really not within our area of responsibility, but we are working with Cochrane Tourism on that. So those are the comments that we got during the process. But there really were no negative, other than this, we're not sure if we're building the right community, but they thought that the priorities were good, 85 to 90%, so in support.
Being that I wasn't at kind of the World Cafe one, but I was at the Spray Lakes Sawmills Family Sports Center with the mayor, And I thought it was really well done by town staff. I have to say that we had lots of people through, and a lot of people provided comments, and I mean, some of them, I guess maybe I was surprised at kind of like the level that some of them got compared to others, but I felt that we were fairly on the right track. I mean, we're not going to be able to please everybody, but I think that we are on the right path. So I definitely move option 1 with the recommendations.
Okay, so you made the motion. Councillor Nagel?
I just have a general question while we're on the topic of big things. I'm just wondering if there's anything our council can be doing to support the regional rail transit feasibility study that came out earlier this year. Despite the fact that I was a bit of a cynic on local transit, I really like the thought of rail connecting the airport to Cochrane, to Morley, to Canmore, to Banff.
Yeah, that's a good question. The mayor has set up, had a meeting with the other mayors. We're talking about setting up a working group of some description. We have, Suzanne is actively involved in the project from an administrative point of view. And we've met with numerous parties that are interested in providing the rail option. So certainly on the administration's agenda, but it does not specifically show here. And I wouldn't be, certainly I wouldn't be adverse to adding it, advocating for that as part of our priorities if you wished it.
Yeah, I would like to do that. Do we need an amendment for that, or?
Yeah, you'd have to just instruct us to, advocate for a regional rail system,
make
and
the
we will
amendment.
include it in the approved.
Sure. I would like to move that we amend the 2019-2022 council priorities to include a goal to advocate for the regional train transit proposal,
Okay,
rail transit proposal.
we understand
Make it
the
sound
Yes.
intent.
Yeah.
Is that a friendly amendment?
I feel like it is.
Yep, okay. Otherwise, we need a whole different circumstance, but, and I can, are you?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I can speak to that specifically, and I think it's a great addition. We have been kind of working on it already in the background, and it's may or may not come to fruition in this 3 years, but obviously advocating it for it is now, so I'd like to see it on the list as well. And as Mr. Devanna has mentioned, I did call a meeting of the 4 municipalities, and we did have that meeting on April 6th, I think it was, or 4th, a couple weeks ago. We've instructed our admins to go away and come back with a bit more technical advice, which they're collecting for a future meeting in another couple of weeks or so, which we will continue to build, I'm hoping, in terms of reference for a committee that will actually get some action done. So having kind of an endorsement from council during the priorities is, I think, a good move. So thank you for that. But generally, the overall, I would agree with Councillor Federico that Spray Lakes Rec Center session was very valuable. I found it more valuable than the World Cafe. I think we kind of covered everybody, so we didn't have a whole lot of people at the World Cafe, and by a whole lot, I mean like 6. And I think that style, while we have an opportunity to really engage with some people, is useful, but I don't think it's as useful as that, go to where the people are, and I think that's what we did at the rec center, and I think we had, I'm just guessing, but well over 200 people. And the questions that I got when people were, generally in favor, as Mr. Devanna is saying, with our priorities, and when they weren't, and they were saying, what about this specific item, I could tie it into our priorities and say, well, we are working on that already, and they, oh, okay. So when I would explain the 70% as, if we were to complete everything on our priority list, I think that number would increase. So I think we're trying to build what people want. We just haven't quite got there yet. So if we fulfill our priorities, I think I would see that number come up. But that's kind of how I've interpreted it. And I really liked I took pictures of all the boards, and I thought it was really telling to see all of the dots in the dotmocracy just plastered all over our community facilities one, where the 1A and 22 and so I think I'm pretty confident we're on the right track. And not to mention that we don't get to, next year we're going to reevaluate again, so we have the opportunity, if we have missed something again, revisit, so. That's what I think. So I'm in favor of moving forward tonight. Councillor Flowers, what do you think?
I think it's a great list. There's a lot of work on there and a lot of big projects, but it's awesome. And I'm glad that Councillor Nagel caught the rail transit, because I really think that should be on there. We're working on it, we're hoping for it, and so why not have it on the list? So, and you guys did an awesome job of talking to the people and going where the people were at. I think that's the key to getting the input, and the church didn't work out so well because everybody's so busy and it's hard to draw them out, but well done. Thank you.
There was also a hockey game that night, I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
too.
There's something.
Any other comments? No? All those in favor of the council priorities? Carried. Thank you. All our business is about big future plans. Mr. Deans, what is our future if we don't have water?
It's a good question. I'm going to hope to provide some clarity there. If this thing opens. Doesn't want to start from there. Thanks. Okay, now that we got the technical details all worked out.
It's all good.
Good evening, Mayor Janung and Council. I appear before you tonight to present our proposed water strategy with the outcome of providing certainty for growth and a secured water capacity to manage our needs for development well into the future. Okay, tonight's presentation will illustrate guiding principles we feel need to be considered when evaluating any option. We also need to understand why a strategy is important, what will it examine, how will we develop the strategy, and who will be part of that strategy development. The outcome of tonight is to share relevant information while at the same time gaining Council's understanding and support for further direction. So on to some of the guiding principles. Fundamental to current and future conditions is the need to maintain the high level of service provided to Cochrane customers, and that we don't jeopardize that high level of service throughout the strategy development. Also, that certainty is provided to accommodate our future growth and account for our needs as a community of choice, that Cochrane's leadership in financial efficiency and effectiveness as a utility operator is not jeopardized through strategy options, that our governance and performance abilities are not challenged through any strategy option, that we manage our precious resource wisely and in an environmentally responsible manner, and lastly, that we don't lose our opportunity to demonstrate innovation and leadership within the industry and the region. So why do we need a strategy? The development and engineering forecasts point to maximizing our current license at around the 40,000 people mark. Important to note with this calculation is that it is never an exact science to land on a number definitively, since water use can vary based on climate conditions and conservation efforts, along with any changes in non-residential growth demand types, which all play a factor in projecting any water use. Critical to the strategy, as will be illustrated, is the fact that our water license and treatment ability will be at capacity. Consideration must also be given to how and where our water is consumed within town. And another important consideration is resource availability and the impact of our changing climate, paired with the need to continue to encourage water conservation. Other important criteria, as I'm currently experiencing, is that water license transfers are very complex and difficult and always at risk. Timeframes can take years for approval, and the price tag to acquire can be significant. Growth both locally and in the region makes the thirst for water a competing interest with our neighboring jurisdictions. As Mayor Janung and Councillor Wilson can attest to, the work of the CMRB Servicing Committee presents both opportunities and potential constraints. Additionally, changing provincial regulations and any future proposed amendments to these regulations all need to be understood within this strategy. So it's important to understand the primary unit of measure when analyzing water demands, and it is called per capita demand. Per capita demand basically means the amount of water used by each person. We take the flow data in liters and use the total volume of water consumed in the whole community and divide by the population to achieve what's called a total community per capita demand. We also calculate residential per capita demand using only the consumption from the residential usage. This number is more reflective of basic domestic use and also shows how our conservation initiatives are impacting water use behaviors in our community. So what we're looking at here, to put this into perspective, is illustrating both the total and residential per capita demands over the last decade. The red bar is the residential use, while the blue represents the all-in total municipal use. This trend illustrates a decrease in consumption over the years, but does suggest that we can do better with more public education of water conservation, along with any new and innovative approaches, where applicable, in the distribution of water within our system. Understanding the per capita demand helps to target initiatives to conserve water and consider new approaches when knowing where all the water is actually flowing. Some of the conditions that can decrease water use are lots of rain, continued conservation efforts, and reuse opportunities. Effects that can increase usage include not replacing aging infrastructure, hot and dry weather patterns, and an increase in commercial industrial growth, which can be a good thing, but also affects overall water demands. And I would like to point out that over the years, Council has been very supportive of infrastructure renewal programs, and to date, we have retrofitted and replaced a number of pipes. Most of the East End and Cochrane has been replaced, and a number of bad areas in Glenbow have been replaced, and we still have more on our list, but to this date in time, it's been a good program and very supportive from the Council level. So rainfall can also have a large impact on use, and this example shows per capita demands during 2 rainy months in 2016, where we looked at 311 liters per capita per day, versus the same 2 months in 2017, where it was hot and dry, where we saw that increase to 392 liters per capita per day. So rain does have a big effect on water use in our community. So where are we now? As previously mentioned, we have an existing water license of 4,000 acre-feet, which equates to 4,933,920 cubic meters of water annually. Reviewing the demand trends over the last 10 years, along with an understanding of the impact of weather, we have estimated that our current license will provide enough volume for approximately 40,000 people. It is also our goal outside of this strategy of extending this limit with further water conservation initiatives. So this chart assumes 3 different growth rates and plots out where we anticipate the capacity of the license will be met. Again, it is important to understand that these are just projections based on data analysis. So at an aggressive 6.5% growth rate, we would reach capacity in around 2024. At a 4% growth rate, we're looking at around 2027, and 2030, assuming a slower growth rate of 3%. Some of the current water conservation initiatives. So I've got a list of some of the initiatives here, and they include qualifying rebate options of mulch, fescue grass, rain barrels, low-flow toilets and washing machines, as well as our new rebate initiative, Lawn Alternative. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. The details of each rebate, as well as downloadable forms, are all available on our website under water conservation. In addition to that, we have a 3-tiered water rate structure that essentially acts like a user pay system, where the more you use, the more you pay. We also do our best to engage and educate the public on how easy it is to conserve water. And during our monthly water meter reading cycle, both high flow and low flow readings are flagged, and follow-up is conducted with the customers to better understand if there is an abnormal condition contributing to the consumption data, whether it's high or low. Leaky toilet that's sometimes tricky to hear, or a water softener that sticks on a regeneration cycle. Those are common occurrences where some of the water bills go way up and the residents aren't quite aware of that. As well as zero consumptions when somebody's not home for more than a month. So we do look into all those things and try to ensure that there's a reasonable explanation for some of that. It also keeps residents from a big surprise when they get their utility bills. So in 2019, we have some new plans ahead of us. As part of the 2019 budget approval, we have successfully recruited an environmental educator. This person will be at public events and working with residents on both water, along with waste and recycling reduction initiatives. We're going to get more signage out there at strategic locations throughout town, reminding residents to go slow on the H2O. Additional work in 2019 by staff is to perform a detailed review of the meter reading data in non-residential accounts, looking for abnormalities, as well as continually being proactive on our leak detection in our own water distribution system. Additionally, we will be adding more water meters into some of our existing parks to optimize irrigation practices, as well work with residents and irrigation companies to consider the installation of rain sensors on systems. This will help keep the automated irrigation systems from triggering on during a rainstorm. And as well, as I mentioned previous, the new rebate program for 2019 is to promote alternative landscaping options to traditional turf. So different types of surfaces that you can put down on your ground instead of turf. So what will our strategy examine? Key factors we will want to understand and analyze include Cochrane's water use and projected capacity requirements to build out. I've already talked a lot about the importance of water conservation and how it has always been an evolving strategy to extend the life of our current water license. Noteworthy to this, as what's in the council report, is the fact that Cochrane has successfully extended the license from the existing projections of 30,000 people to 40,000 people with effective public support from conservation initiatives over the last decade. From a regional perspective, we will consider all options relating to being a regional provider, in addition to being a regional customer, which could be in the way of a potable water pipeline from Calgary. Within all of these scenarios, servicing will be considered from a number of perspectives. Both short-term and long-term strategies will be considered. Within the short term, the possibility of obtaining a smaller license, optimizing treatment capacity with some capital investment in technology, and gain a small amount of additional capacity to further extend the time required for the implementation of the long-term solution. And in the long term, if we build a second water treatment plant, we may most likely be required to have raw water storage. With that in mind, critical to this would be a funding formula, land availability, and the time and complex nature required for any license transfer process, as well as any regional perspectives. In developing the strategy, many conversations will be conducted with our neighboring jurisdictions to understand any common needs, challenges, and potential partnerships that may be realized. From there, we will take stock on the state of affairs in the region and develop the options for further consideration. We will then return to council near the end of 2019 with the results of the strategy. And who will be a part of this strategy? The development of the strategy will involve input from town administration with perspective from staff involved with treatment and distribution of our water. There'll be expertise and resources from our consulting engineering firm, Urban Systems. Considering the nature of the water market being so complex, potentially experts in the acquisition and transfer of water licenses. And of course, there will be continued participation in the CMRB, both from the political and staff side of things. I'm getting near the end here. The next steps. The next step would include approving option 1 in the council report with an intended deliverable of detailed options and a triple bottom line analysis in Q4 of 2019. And with that, I end my presentation and prepare to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Dean. It's a very technical subject. It's not just easy to go and turn on more taps or get a license. I think you've outlined it very well in your presentation. I'd just like to pass along kudos to your whole department. I was on council when we were talking about a current license only lasting for 30,000 people, and that would be almost this year. So, yeah, very good job on conservation and extending that license to 40, and hopefully we can, as you say, extend it further than that. So, full support of everything you're doing there in the water department. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the shirt and tie choice today, conscious or not, for the presentation. That's I was wondering, are there opportunities with stormwater for irrigation? We'd heard a little bit about that before. I was wondering where that sits. Is that still on a provincial level for something like that to go ahead?
Yeah. Through the mayor to Councillor Wilson, that's a great question, and that's certainly, there is a draft of a water reuse strategy that Alberta Environment has produced and is circulating right now that does open the door to a certain extent to be able to consider stormwater as a reuse. Certainly there's some concerns around treatment of that stormwater and what the reuse would be if it's on a field where children may be playing, what kinds of contaminants could be introduced into the play environment there. So there's still a little bit of work to do, but certainly we're very supportive of looking into this strategy, suggesting amendments, and when available, utilizing that strategy to the maximum.
Okay, thank you. And with this proposal, we're authorizing $110,000. Is that correct?
No, that's next on the agenda.
Oh, pardon me.
Yes, the option is
It's
to
separate, right?
authorize the allocation of $110,000 from the Future Water Project Reserve to develop the water strategy.
Right, thank you. And so I think I understand the 110,000 is just for the strategy itself that was outlined there to be returned in Q4 this year?
That is correct.
Right. Okay.
That does involve some engineering to present the various servicing options that will be part of the strategy.
Okay, and since we don't have a motion, I can move option 1 here?
Yep.
Council accepts? Okay, thank you. I so move option 1, and thank you.
Councillor Flowers?
I just wanted to say that I know how important the water strategy is, and I really like the timelines that you've outlaid. My one question was going to be around the funding and sort of where you see the money going, but I think you kind of answered it. Engineers?
Through the chair to Councillor Flowers, yes, certainly that would involve some engineering work, some facilitation of discussions with different levels of government and different regional partners, and then certainly some funding formulas to help develop how we would ultimately pay for any strategies that we want to implement.
Thank you.
Councillor Nagel?
Question for Mr. Devanna. Since a portion of this study is definitely going to end up recommending certain capital that we need to be building for water, is there any way we could account for this as a capital cost that we could collect development levies for?
We would have development, off-site levies to build a water treatment plant. It would be 100% for new development. So it is, we still have to figure out how much do we need, what services, and then we would develop a new levy, and it likely to start collecting money to construct this thing, depending on our growth, between 7 and 12 years.
I meant, could we use development levies to pay for a portion of this $110,000 study? So is planning for capital part?
It's not a project in the off-site levy bylaw, and so the answer would be no.
No, it's not possible?
It's not.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I see we're taking it from reserve. It's not a tax implication per se. I mean, somewhere it was, but the money's in reserves at this time, correct?
The reserve money came from contributions from the utility bill, so revenues generated from the water utility were put into a reserve to save for these types of needs.
And part of the strategy, if I'm reading it correctly, would be a funding strategy also for future needs, whether it be upgrading the offsite levy bylaw for a new water treatment plant if deemed necessary, or purchase a license, or building of capacity or storage. All of that is going to be looked at.
That is correct. We plan on looking at every idea possible, no matter how off the wall or practical the idea may seem.
Perfect. Okay. Any other, oh, sorry, Councillor Federico?
I just wanted to say I'm in support of this. I mean, obviously, we know how important water is. I don't think it's time to kind of put the brakes on it, so thank you for all the information.
And as a council priority that we just voted on, I think it's only prudent that we deal with it. So, no other comments? No? All those in favor? Carried? Thank you. Sorry, I was reading the agenda incorrectly there, Councillor Wilson, so that did include the 110,000. Do you need to flip one more page? Draft Cochrane Community Vision. The most exciting part of the agenda. I'm pretty excited about it.
All right. So in January, or not January, January last year, the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board was established. And they're now getting to the point where they're asking each community for what their vision is within the 10 members. And so in about February, we, senior staff and council, started to meet to discuss what is our vision for the future of Cochrane. And, you know, because if one wants to, you know, control what is going to happen around our borders, then we need to think it through. And so we've done a small presentation here, and we've got, and so go through it with you for the first time. It's our test. So, you know, I've talked about this, but the Calgary Metropolitan Board is, you know, looking to develop a long-term plan, and we've got a draft here on what the vision could be for Cochrane. Here's the town of Cochrane. And what really started this is there's a lot going on around our borders. And so the first one is we got the Stoney Nakoda First Nation Reserve, which is directly adjacent on our border on the west side by Bow Ridge. And they did go through a land use exercise last year, but it did not get approved. But there is a chance that they are going to do some type of development on our borders, and we want to have some influence on what we thought that might look like. The next thing is we've got this gravel pit. It's about 1 kilometer from town on its eastern border, and they're operating right now on their western border, but they'll be moving towards town, and that's in Rocky View County. We've got Cochrane Lakes, Cochrane North. So this is an area structure plan and a neighborhood plan that envisions up to 13,000 people being on our northern border. And right now, most of that development is up by the Cochrane Lake area. But if they were to fully develop their plan, we'd have 13,000 people out there. We then have the Bear Spa Country Residential Area, estimated another 4,000 people. For the most part, this is, closer to Calgary at this time. But there is the potential there to have these larger country residential lots coming up against our border. We then, last year, had the Glenbow Ranch ASP that got approved, 13,400 more people. Half of this is a park, but the other half is for an urban-style development adjacent to our border. Then finally, we've got Harmony, which is 10,000 people at full build-out, and it's to the south of our border. And so this is why we thought we really need to have a vision about what we would like to see happen in and around Cochrane. So council and senior team identified basically, what do we got here? 5 key aspirations that we would like for the community, and I'm going to go through each one of them. The first one is our identity that distinguishes our town in the region, and we feel it's important that we retain our small town values, our Western heritage charm, the sense of arrival when you arrive here, and I definitely know that when I first came to this town, and then the wide open spaces that we have. We value our open spaces and natural areas, and we want to steward and protect these for our town, and so that we retain the dramatic landscape and the rolling hills and the trees. We want to have the connected pathways that we have, and we want to protect our waterways. We want a town that's livable, so we can create a complete community for all residents and businesses in our town. We want to have a strong, resilient community. We want diverse housing options, and we want to have a complete set of community amenities, which we're doing pretty good, but we still have others that we could do. We'd like to have a vibrant economy. We want to attract people to our town based on its energy, its history, its culture. And we see this having a thriving employment hub, mostly in the downtown area, a dynamic historic downtown and quarry. We want to attract innovative businesses to come to Cochrane. We want to be business friendly, and we want to have vibrant shops and restaurants where people can go. On the connectivity, we want to promote a healthy lifestyle for everyone, and we want to do this by having multimodal transportation options, so biking, transit, cars, pathways, those types of things, pedestrians. We want to connect all our communities. We have a few gaps, and we would like to have everybody be able to get to every other area in town through some type of multimodal transportation. And we want to build strong social networks and community spirit. That's our overall vision. So what we've done here in trying to build off each of our aspirations is we want to protect the green corridors that are in and around Cochrane. And so from a regional planning perspective, what we've tried to show here is the Big Hill area, the Horse Creek, the Jumping Pound Creek, the Bow River, and the Glenbow Ranch area. And we want these areas protected not just within the town, but outside the town. And we know that Rocky View County has a similar vision, and we're hoping they will support this. Can you bring me my water? From a complete community point of view, we want a town where we have the highest level of densities in the most vibrant part of our town, which is walkable and very active in the center. And so we've sort of put a dot in the center of town. And as we move out from the center, we want to reduce our densities, have lower densities in our neighborhoods to support that, you know, that feeling that we have in Cochrane. This map is we want to retain, so we've got the highest density in the middle and the lower densities on the outside, and we want to retain the rural character and the gateways into Cochrane. We feel that's important to our overall identity, and so we're trying to depict here is that we want to have some influence in this beige area, and we want it to retain its rural character the way it is today. So even if Rocky View County was thinking about developing in these areas, we want them to retain the rural character in those areas. We do know that in the future, we're likely going to grow beyond our population targets within our current boundaries. So what we're saying is in the next 30 years, we think we are planning for all the development to happen within our borders. And beyond 30 years, we've identified here where we think the likely additional lands would be outside of our borders that would be for commercial, light industrial, residential, and open space needs. So what we're going to do here, so now we've got Rocky View County's potential and Stoney Nakota's land development opportunities outside of and we're going to overlay our vision for these areas. So the first one is that we want to retain the green landscape. We want that retain that rural character, and we want to retain the ecosystems that support the river, support the fish, the animals, and all the things that are around Cochrane. The next thing, it's hard to see, but we would like to see our highest density in the center of town, right where it says Town of Cochrane. And then on the outskirts, we would like to have lower density, and then in Rocky View County, we'd like to have rural density. We've got 30 years out, we're talking about where would the boundaries of the town go, and where would we potentially grow when we get to our maximum. And so what we've done here is we've shown on the west side of town, near where the new RCMP building and all that, we see that as a potential area for new development and a natural extension. Then up in the Cochrane Lakes, Cochrane North area, we see adjacent to Sunset Ridge and an opportunity there for residential development. In the Mount Francis area, we see that is primarily, in the Big Hill area, is primarily open space green area. And then finally, on the south side, there may be opportunities for some employment areas and perhaps some more residential development, but we're looking at this 30 years out. And then finally, what we're saying here with this beige color is that outside of our potential growth areas, we see that as retaining its rural character and retaining the gateways into town as being rural. And so when you arrive in Cochrane, you know you've got to a new place. And so what we would like to do, if council supports this draft vision, we would like you to well, here, what does it say here? Like council to accept the Cochrane Community Vision as information and direct administration to initiate community engagement. And our goal on the community engagement is to have online surveys. We're going to present this at the trade show on May 4th and 5th. We're going to do a public meeting on May 23rd, and we're going to also bring it to the community engagement barbecue on June the 6th. And the idea is to bring this other community, see if they support this work, and see what tweaks they want to make on it, and then bring it back to council. I believe in the first week in June, to see if we could get it approved, and then we will bring it to the Calgary Metropolitan Regional Board, and we'll make a presentation to them on Cochrane's vision for the future. So, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So you have it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Devanna. Like I said, it's no surprise to council. I've been pretty excited about getting this work done and finalizing these maps. And obviously, we're going to the community to see. And I think the question we're asking is, what have we missed? I look forward to hearing from the community, and I think, you know, as we pointed out, that all of these 5 aspirations, I think you could transplant into any community in the region. And I think everybody would have these aspirations, but what do they mean to our residents? So, and as I think we've kind of highlighted in the report, the pressures from Rocky View and the region and the CMRB, the Metropolitan Region Board, has really highlighted the fact that Cochrane needs to have our own long-term vision. And what I think this has done a very good job of, as we kind of touched in with all of our existing documents. This is not something that's completely absurd and new, but it kind of reflects our sustainability plan, our current MDP, which we'll be looking at next year, land use bylaw that we're looking at this year. There is a lot of community engagement that's gone into kind of some of the ideas behind this plan. But to kind of layer it as we have and highlight some of the things that we've highlighted, I think is really a fresh way of looking at Cochrane's future. So I look forward to hearing from the public and seeing what we could add or tweak, as Mr. Devanna said. But yeah, I think it's about time that we have something like this we can take out and shop. And I did meet with Reeve Belkey today and gave him a kind of an overview of the hard copy. I did not show him the PowerPoint, but just to, as this is going into the public realm tonight, I didn't want to surprise him with residents calling in Rocky View going, what is Cochrane doing? So he showed very positive responses to it. Obviously, we haven't, you know, really dived into it. Yeah, we haven't really gotten into it at a level that, you know, really elicits the conversations that we need to have, and I look forward to that final document and being able to address all of the regional partners and the partnership at the end in June, hopefully, with the document that Cochrane has built together. So it's an exciting day if you guys are all in support of this. Councillor Flowers?
I'd like to make the recommended action that council accept the Cochrane Community Vision as information and direct administration to initiate community engagement. And I'm really excited that you've got it ready for the trade fair weekend. I think there'll be some great discussions there about it, and it's nice to see it all pulled together after all the discussions that we've had. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nagel?
I'm very supportive of this plan. When we planned the weekend to go away and figure out the long-term vision of Cochrane, when we planned that weekend to do it, I wasn't sure what to expect, and I'm very satisfied with the outcome of it. I think in all my years as a councillor, this is probably the thing that I like most that I've been part of. I've always been very worried that in 50 or 60 years from now, Calgary would just consume Cochrane, and I've never really thought it would be possible for us to prevent that, and this plan is the step in the right direction. And what I like most about it is, firstly, within this plan, we are sending a message that we want to remain our own independent community. We don't want to be part of just the greater Calgary area, similar to the greater Toronto area in the future. I really like that we are making a clear priority that future development on our borders is going to be lower density. That kind of creates like a density gradient as we move into the rural part of Alberta. And the third piece that I like is the identification of the green spaces that we want to preserve. Having grown up in this area, I spent a lot of time walking around with my dogs, my friends, my family, and all those river valleys, and I think it's critical that we protect them for generations to come. So I'm going to be 100% behind this plan. My only request would be to administration that you please provide us with the digital copies of your maps so I can email them around and stuff like that.
Yeah, we were just waiting until it was public
Okay.
tonight.
Perfect. Thanks.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. I also enthusiastically support this vision. I thought it was, just as Councillor Nagel said, an excellent opportunity where we as a council got to come together and sort of brainstorm what our vision is, and there was an amazing amount of consensus amongst the group that was exciting to me, and I think what we've achieved here, and we're talking about rural character areas and keeping our gateways into town rural, they're very important to me. They're very important to this council, and I think this document is kind of a, it's not just an impressive document in its own right for us, but I feel like it's something that we can take to other communities around us, and hopefully they'll be as enthusiastic as I am about this, a way for them to shape their own communities in the future and not just leave things to random chance and random growth. So I think this is really important, and I'm very enthusiastic. Thank you for the presentation.
My hope is that this is a template for the rest of the communities in the regional board to use, and then we overlay all of our maps in the region, and then we discuss where we have the overlaps. And that's kind of what I went through with Reeve Belke today was this regional plan, this regional growth plan, when we start to dive into it, it's so complex. There's the servicing, the land use, the transit, I mean, there's so many things that we regionally should be talking about, but I think we keep circling around all of those things and talking about all of them, where if we were to put down some land use maps like this, I think we'd very quickly get to a few things that we don't agree on, and I think we'd very quickly, as we have as a group, find consensus on the rest, and then we can kind of park that, talk about our issues, and maybe move things forward quicker. Then obviously zoom in on some of those other things, regional, all the things I listed. But yeah, I'm excited to use this as a template and hopefully convince our partners that this is something that they should be doing in their municipality. So yeah, I think we've talked about it enough. I look forward to the feedback from the community. And what I like the most about it is that it tells a story. And I think it starts with where we are and where we'd like to be, and a kind of a path on how to get there. And that's with the overlaying of the maps. I think from our visioning session, that was crucial when we had the layover piece of paper and the fried egg piece all drawn in pencil. This kind of solidifies it. So yeah, that being said, we've got a motion on the floor, right? Who was that? Councillor Flowers, thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Devanna. All right, Mayor's report. Quite a busy couple of weeks. Volunteer week, obviously. Went to the volunteer appreciation dinner where we thanked all of our volunteers from all the committees that we've had over the past year. I think that was a good choice by the Ledge team to go with that rather than the token gift. I mean, and we've done gifts in the past and they've been good choices, but I actually liked the invitation to dinner and having people over to our house, the ranch house, for dinner. And the feedback from everybody that I talked to at the table was very appreciative and very warm, and it was an opportunity for committees that, say like the Tri-Site Committee or the Transit Committee that have come and gone, those people have not really gotten back together and had an opportunity to say hello or just talk about the outcome of their committee. So I thought that was a really good opportunity for us to thank those volunteers. Did a lot of interviews with different media outlets for the naming of the bridge. So we got fairly good pickup on that, I guess, as a positive news story coming out of Cochrane, both the Calgary Herald and the Calgary Sun, and also Mayor Brown from Airdrie had commented on one of the posts from social media. Airdrie, I guess, had ties to the tenant family as well, and they were passing on the congratulations, job well done to Cochrane. So I have not heard any negative feedback from the bridge naming. Keeping on the Airdrie theme, we had our first application go through the CMRB. Airdrie had a small development inside their right in the heart of their community that triggered an IREF application process where the CMRB had to look at the application. So that has gone through the 28-day period, and our staff had a look at it. So planning staff is putting together a process so that we have a formal way of actually, when that is triggered, that we would have a series of events that happens, and we would be let known that this is happening, and, you know, are we in favor or not in favor of these things. So this was a very small, you know, first step, I guess, in that. So that process is underway. Leaders of Tomorrow, I think there's a few of us at that, where we presented Leaders of Tomorrow with their kudos for all the things that our youth are doing in the community, and I think that's a good sign. We're in good hands. Attended the same night the Montana's opening, and then Seniors on the Bow, had a coffee with them, which I do monthly, and just the highlight there was I brought forward the idea of getting the elders from Morley, in the Stoney Nakoda Nation, to come to the Seniors on the Bow to have coffee, which I think would be a good connection. So the Seniors on the Bow were going to let me know how they could facilitate that. I had conversation with Southland where they said they would donate the bus. So we would just basically getting neighbors together, and I think that's a good way of connecting communities. Food drive, talking about communities. Volunteered at the food drive the other week. Seems like a long time ago. I think it was a week ago. So by all signs, it looked like we had another record outpouring of food from the community, and over 700 volunteers. It never ceases to amaze me the amount of effort and people and the organized chaos that group organizes there. And you know, I think the highlight for me was on my table, I always seem to find some random piece of food that is not assigned anything. And this year was, or this time was, quail's eggs in water, but apparently that goes to the miscellaneous table. So same day 7-Eleven opened, which seems like it was a huge deal in our community. There was a lot of people there. It was packed, giving away free Slurpees and other things. So that was good to cut the ribbon there. Sikh Heritage Month and Vasachi, I think I said that right, celebration, which is the New Year celebration for the Sikh community. And I learned how to say Sikh instead of Sikh, which I've been mispronouncing for 51 of my 51 years. Went to the library board meeting, talked about future plans, the tri-site concept plan. The library board, obviously, Councillor Flowers, you're well aware, they're very excited of next steps. So I kind of outlined that we have plans in place. The implementation is coming from staff, and just to sit tight for a while and allow things to happen a little bit. And so yeah, it was good to chat with them. That was even election day, so I made presents at Mr. Guthrie's celebration party, and actually timed it perfectly to be the first person shaking his hand when they announced him formally. So 1 second after he became our MLA-elect, we were getting to work about what next for Cochrane. So we both joked about that, and then we had lunch again the next day where we talked about certain things about Cochrane and what are important. You know, obviously the 1A and 22 intersection, kind of outlined where we're at in that process, which some of the things were some news to him. And he had promised to work for us and get the things done that we need. So we are going to craft an email to him outlining those things in specific, so that he has a clear set of marching orders to take to the province when they get sworn in. I believe it's the 30th of April. So he's well aware of those things. I also sent a letter of congratulations to both him and Premier-elect Jason Kenney on behalf of Cochrane. So looking forward to working with those two gentlemen. And then, of course, stairs. I've been climbing stairs. I'm ready to be done the stair climb challenge. My hips, my knees, my ankles, every time I get out of bed, it sounds like popcorn popping, but no, it's my joints. And we climbed up the Cochrane Hill the other day, just to highlight even more. And as I said in my post, we've gone Rocky 4, where we're, I don't know if you guys saw Rocky 4, I think it was in the 80s, but Rocky was fighting the Russian, and the Russian was all pumped full of steroids and on medical, apparatus to get him in shape, and Rocky went out and climbed a hill and chopped wood and got into nature. So that's what we were doing. And so I'm at almost $15,000 of raised for Wellspring, and looking forward to getting that done May 5th before our next council meeting on the 13th. So priorities I've been working on are obviously this vision, and council priorities have been taking up a lot of time. Tri-site concept plan, there's been a lot of groups coming forward asking, we want to get going, what's next? So seniors, the Lions, Boys and Girls Club, and as I said, the library board, and then obviously the election. And our strategy moving forward to continue to put Cochrane on the map and not get missed in municipal funding. So that's what I've been up to the last 2 weeks. Yeah, that was my 2 minutes. Who's got a council report? Councillor Flowers.
I too enjoyed all those volunteer appreciation events that the community held, and they were all well done. Things you didn't mention, I went to the annual general meeting for Seniors on the Bow. They had a really good turnout, and they've got four or five new members that have joined up, so I think they're going to be busy, and we'll be hearing lots from them. And I also was lucky to attend a ASHA conference. It's Alberta Seniors Housing Association, and it was supported by the Rocky View Foundation. And they're the ones that want to build the new Big Hill Lodge here in the community and other lodges in other communities. So it was a really good networking opportunity and chance to hear other people's ideas and what's happening across the province. So
Good for you.
that's about it.
Thank you. That's it for reports. Okay. You have no other items on the agenda. As Mr. Sheard would say, this meeting is terminated. Thank you.